Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 Valero Texas Open Data Dive Show. We've got a good show, hopefully, for you all, if I could ever make it through this intro. We are going to be looking at the forecast. We'll be checking the prior leaderboards. We'll be digging deep into the data for TPC San Antonio, the Oaks course. Don't want to waste any more time. Let's get right into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf research tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter golf gambler and a much better golf DFS player. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where I posted some research earlier today around the past 9 winners of the Valero Texas Open and the players in the field this week that fit that criteria or fit that pattern. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, then give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and my top player usage in DFS for the contests that I play. The betting card will be pretty extensive this week as there were several players that I liked at their number when it came out this week. So if you want to see those pieces of information, give me a follow over at X as well. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. It's a great way to start your week of preparation, and he continues to update you throughout the week with his own version of recent form, course history, and all of that. And if you are a subscriber to his article, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday evening after Calls, as he is gracious enough to host me over there. And we continue the DFS talk. We talk about game theory, favorite places on the price board, kind of lineups that we are gravitating toward, all of the good stuff. So if you don't want to miss out on that great conversation that takes place over there, then you need to subscribe to his article, which again is free to do. And then lastly, we're live. Chat is open. Want to hear from you all. Who's your favorite this week at the Valero Texas Open? Do you think anybody plays their way into the Masters with a win this week? What kind of statistics do you think most play here at the Oaks course? So hopefully we'll be able to answer all of those questions or confirm any beliefs that you have, give you some information as we prepare you for your week of setting lineups and wagers and whatnot. So let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2024 Valero Texas Open. And we start on a Monday evening over at Windfinder. Now, of course, no super forecast, as that only goes 2 days out. But from what we can see, at least in terms of an extended forecast in San Antonio, it's going to be really windy. You see perhaps a little bit of rain overnight tonight. I don't think it'd be enough to drench the course and make it really, really soft. Thursday looks somewhat calm. Maybe some wind picking up in the afternoon per usual. But Friday, Saturday, gusts in the mid-20s and even reaching 30 miles an hour on Saturday potentially. And then Sunday looks like it calms down quite a bit for the championship round. So a lot of wind in the forecast, which is a lot of the defense of the Oaks course. So with that, we will move to Fantasy National. I'm going to set this for 2 years of a time frame, and of course add the moderate and windy filter as we just saw in Windfinder. Now, while this loads, there has been one more field change. Thomas Dietrich has decided not to play. He is withdrawn from the event. So that brings our total number of players who originally committed and then have now dropped out to 4. Matt Wallace, Scott Stallings, Stefan Yeager, and then Thomas Dietrich earlier today decided not to play. But in moderate and windy conditions in the past 2 years, the top players in the field this week in terms of total performance in the wind, Rory, Jordan Spieth, Corey Connors, Denny McCarthy, Matt Fitzpatrick, Max Homa, Adam Scott, Ricky Fowler, Harry Hall, and Patrick Rogers. Those are your top 10 in terms of total wind performance. Of course, the Oaks course, long course, 7,438 yards or so. So we definitely are going to be looking at long courses as a filter again this week. On long courses in the past 2 years, our top performers have been Sam Stevens, Akshay Bhatia, Max Homa, Matt Kuchar, Nico Echeverria, Nikolai Højgaard, Michael Kim, Jimmy Walker, Kevin Chappell, and Corey Connors. And you will notice that this is a little bit updated. I believe some of the rankings have changed a little bit from last night, but Houston is now in. As you see, Akshay Bhatia playing very, very well at Memorial Park. So the rankings and stats for this evening have been updated to include last week's Houston Open. All right, not going to do anything with difficult or easy relative to par. I still think this is going to play to about average in difficulty, as it generally does. We took a quick look at that last night in the historic conditions, but I can bring it back up. You know, every single round the past 2 years, so all 8 rounds, the past 2 years have played to average. In 2021, 2 difficult and 2 average. Now, the winds were pretty calm for 2019, hence why it was easy every single round. But whenever a tournament is average in terms of difficulty, I don't like using that filter. I generally prefer to focus on the filter if it's easy or difficult. So instead, let's go ahead and just jump straight into the prior leaderboards. Figure out what metrics, what skills, or what skill sets tend to play the best around the Oaks course, and then we'll examine the players in the field who are excelling at those skill sets. Looking at last year and Corey Connors' win, see we have the top 14 here just due to ties. What I would have expected, only one player negative in approach. We got some pretty high numbers here. Corey Connors, who led the tournament. Sam Stevens probably second, if I had to guess. Now, the off the tee, there are a few players that are negative, but majority of them are pretty darn close to field average. Yes, Sam Ryder was not very good off the tee, but everybody else is about a half a stroke or better in the negative towards field average. Around the green, only a couple players negative in around the green, and this was a little bit surprising for me last night, considering the amount of success that consistent performers have had at the Oaks course, and how much they have been performing, or how well they're performing around the green. And then a few players negative in putting. If we sort on each individual statistic, you got some cut making here off the tee. Top 5, a top 10, a top 10, top 15. Your winner's fairly high up here, but you also have a couple of miscuts, somewhat high and off the tee. Don't know how much we're going to be using it this week, as generally speaking, the rough is not difficult to play out of. Fairways aren't necessarily the demanding or the most demanding facet of this course. Instead, it's really about the irons. Look, first, second, third, 10th. That's pretty direct correlation, if you ask me. Yeah, you have some middling and some clunker of miscuts. Luke Donald here seemingly did not hit it very far, and did not hit a fairway, so his off the tee was atrocious, but was great with the irons. It takes a while before you even scroll to a miscut. So approach, very, very big facet around the Oaks course, at least it was last year, and that's a continuing theme. Around the green, decent, other than a miscut here from Kazuki Higa, who didn't do anything else well last year. I mean, the irons were atrocious. Off the tee was pretty bad. The putting was pretty bad. He was just good around the green. Otherwise, decent. Fairly decent. Top 10, top 15, a third. But the thing is, your winner's not up here, which he generally won't be. Corey Connors is not a very good around the green player, but the winner's not up here. And then putting, again, cut making with some more elite performances. If you're just burying everything like Andrew Novak or Taylor Montgomery, Sam Ryder seemed to have been last year, you're going to vault up the leaderboards. But it's not a direct correlation. You see Justin Lauer, a 70th, who putt fantastic last year. A couple of miscuts right here at the bottom of your screen. Nick Watney, Trevor Cohn, Marty Doe. So putting is okay. We're definitely not going to ignore it. But by far and away, it seems that the most important shot type here at the Oaks course was the approach. At least it was for last year. If we look 2 years ago, when J.J. Spawn won, we see in the top 17 just due to ties. Again, a couple more players negative in approach, but only one was really, really bad. It was Bo Hostler. You see the amount of players that are negative off the tee, few players negative and around the green. If we sort on each individual statistic, you got a lot of cut making in 2022 with the irons. Not necessarily the elite correlation. J.J. Spawn has to scroll a little bit as your winner. Off the tee, a miscut fairly high up here. You see J.J. Spawn was just pretty darn balanced in his win. Gained 2.5, 3, 3.3, and 3, essentially. Off the tee, somewhat. Around the green, again, some more cut making. Around the green is going to be a little bit more important than I would have thought initially for the Oaks course. And thinking about it, it makes a little bit more sense. Even though these greens are slightly larger than tour average, they're not easy to hit. So if greens aren't easy to hit, thinking of places like Pebble Beach, like Memorial, like Houston last week, then the around the green is going to be a bigger factor. And then putting, a lot more direct correlation because of the absurdly high numbers here. But you also had a miscut pretty darn high from Kelly Craft and Jonas Blixt. So really, I think I'm starting to change my mind on the around the green versus off the tee. I think we're going to be looking at some around the green. If we look at off the tee, it'll be very little. It'll probably be on courses that are long. Maybe we'll look at off the tee in the wind, but I'm starting to feel that around the green is going to be a little bit more important than off the tee here at the Oaks course this week. So just getting that set for the next set, as that is the lean that I am looking towards right now early on in my research. If driver is in a lot of these players' hands, it doesn't appear that distance is going to be the big thing. I've mentioned how fairways aren't a demanding factor. So just looking at off the tee in general, our top off the tee players on long courses the past couple of years, we have Keith Mitchell, Cameron Champ, Corey Connors, Garrick Higo, Max Homa, Joseph Bramlett, Alejandro Tosti, Davis Thompson, Johnny Vegas, Kevin Doherty, and Rory. Remove the filters here. Looking at the 2024 season, strokes gained approach, our top approach players in the 2024 calendar year in the field this week: Corey Connors, Ryan Moore, Keith Mitchell, Joel Damon, Seabez, Andrew Novak, Austin Eckroat, Lucas Glover, Victor Paris, and Aaron Rye are our top 10 in terms of approach. Absolutely going to be looking at a little bit of around the green, considering how correlating it was on these prior leaderboards and going through some of the data today. Top around the green players: Hideki, S.H. Kim, Mav McNeely, Aaron Baddeley, Lucas Glover, Roger Sloan, Zach Blair, Martin Laird, Ben Griffin, Jorge Campillo, and Harry Hall. Lastly, going to clear that out. We're going to grab all of the courses that are Poa Trivialis Overseed. So we have Harbortown, Innisbrook. I will click Memorial Park, and you'll have to understand that Memorial Park is going to include some of the rounds in the fall when it was Bermuda. I can't help that in a large picture view like this. So, but considering we were just at Memorial Park and they were Poa Trivialis, we definitely don't want to overlook that from last week. So Memorial Park, Quail Hollow, that one, Stadium Course, TPC San Antonio, Sawgrass, and Scottsdale. So we'll apply the course filters. We're going to look in just the past 2 years. And your top putters on Poa Trivialis Overseed the past 2 years: Sam Ryder, Matt Kuchar, Taylor Montgomery, Brendan Todd, Chad Ramey, Tommy Fleetwood, Ben Griffin, Matt McNeely, Aaron Baddeley, and Alex Bjork. Those are your top 10 in terms of putting on Poa Trivialis the past 2 years. Let's get this reset for fairways, greens, distance, although that's not going to be a factor. Fairways and greens. All right, going into let's go last year's leaderboard first. And Corey Connors' win. You see, he was negative in distance. A lot of these players negative in distance. It's just not that big of a deal. Fairways, in fact, a lot of players negative. The biggest thing was good drives gained. Not a single player negative in good drives gained. You have some pretty low, or middling performances, but they're still positive. Greens, this seems to be a big number. Like, look at Corey Connors, 12.1 in greens gained. If we sort on these, your winner led in greens like first, third, sixth, 15th, 5th, 10th. Very, very, very solid correlation. Good drives, third, sixth, first, fifth. Kind of falls off after that. So a lot in the greens. Good drives gained, not to be ignored. But at least last year it was about the greens. And then with Spawn's win, again, negative in distance. With several players negative in distance. Fairways wasn't a big thing either. Only one player negative in greens. So it's looking like it's the greens in regulation. Spawn's a little bit, towards the bottom here, sure. But cut making, you do have one miscut from Bramlett, fairly high in the greens. Good drives. Good drives actually seems a little bit more correlating in 2022. Still some, middling performances, but then your winner is a little bit further up on good drives gained. It's one of these two, or it's these two statistics. Kind of tomato in my mind. Good drives gained, of course, is a drive that hits the fairway or the player still hitting the green in regulation from the rough. Greens gained, fairly self-explanatory. It's one of these two metrics, maybe a little bit of both. We'll look at this probably just on long courses again, since that's what we know the Oaks course is. So your top good drives gained players on long courses: Ryan Moore, Colin Morikawa, Corey Connors, Hayden Buckley, Nate Lashley, Josh Teeter, Alex Smalley, Aaron Rai, Johnny Vegas, and Matthew Neesmith are your top 10 in good drives gained. Greens, of those 10, you've got Ryan Moore, Corey Connors, Nate Lashley, Alex Smalley, Aaron Rai, and Johnny Vegas, who are top 10 in both good drives and greens. So you might want to put an asterisk or make a special note of them. But your top 10 in terms of greens gained on long courses: Corey Connors, Henrik Norlander, Alex Smalley, Johnny Vegas, Ryan Palmer, Joseph Bramlett, Colin Morikawa, Martin Laird, Nate Lashley, and Aaron Rai. There's your top 10 in terms of greens gained on long courses. I'm starting to lean towards the greens a little bit, at least conceptually thinking about the Oaks course and the players that generally perform well there. Of course, Corey Connors has been exceptional there. You know, elite in the good drives game, but number one in greens. Norlander's been okay here. Ryan Palmer. So, starting to lean towards the greens, I think. All right, let's go to scoring. This will be interesting. With an average difficulty tournament, you could absolutely argue both ways, birdies and bogeys. We saw last night that bogey avoidance might be a little bit more of a consistent metric, but birdies gained probably had the higher numbers. Looks like that's panning out here as well. Looking at the top 14, again, a little more consistency from the bogey avoidance, only 2 players negative, but the higher numbers, higher raw values are in the birdies gained. 8.9, which seems like it led. So pretty direct there. First, second, third, fifth, third, sixth, sixth. Falls off a little bit after that, but pretty direct correlation there. Bogey avoidance, you got your cut making and your winner led, but not necessarily as direct. First, third, 15th, 9th, third, 39th. Slight lean to the birdies gained, it looks like. And then in 2022, again, winner probably led in this. Prefer the birdies. If we sort, or I'm sorry, not sort, but look at the top 17 here just due to ties, not a single player negative in birdies gained. Kind of leaning towards, oh my gosh, look at this. First, fourth, second, eighth. Yeah, that's pretty direct. That's pretty direct. So it's looking like birdies gained on long courses, mainly because, again, I don't like looking at the average difficulty filter. So on long courses, the past 2 years, now I'm trying to think. Eagles, do we want to factor it in? Probably not. Not very many eagles. You do have the drivable par 4 17th, a decent eagle chance on the par 5 14th. But there's not a whole lot of eagles here. Like if we look at 2022, there wasn't a whole lot. 2023, Sam Stevens probably had a few. Reevey maybe a few. I suppose it doesn't hurt to look at birdies or better. So your top birdies or better gained players on long courses the last 2 years. Sam Stevens, who we just saw last year, solo second. Been on. Jordan Spieth, Michael Kim, Matt Kuchar, Trace Crowe, Hayden Springer, Nikolai Højgaard, Nate Lashley, and Akshay Bhatia are our top 10 in terms of birdies or better gained on long courses. I also don't hate the idea of looking at opportunities gained if I end up not being completely confident in birdies or better. So let's just take a quick look at opportunities gained. Top opportunities gained players on long courses: Ryan Palmer, Corey Connors, Max Homa, Trace Crowe, Michael Kim, Lucas Glover, Colin Morikawa, Eric Barnes, Webb Simpson, and Rory are our top 10 in opportunities on long courses. Alrighty, let's bring this back to all records. We're going to set this for 2024 as we are done with the filters. Let's take a look at proximity. Be interesting again to see proximity. I may be thinking total procs. The majority of our approach shots at the Oaks course technically come from 150 to 175, or at least that's the range that has the most approach shots coming from them. Against the tour average, however, it's more so the 75 to 125, the real short wedge distances, due to the amount of short par 4s that are here. And the fact that not every single one of these par 5s is attackable in 2. kind of playing out a little bit. You see the performance of the elite, or the top of the leaderboard, in the 150 to 175. Yeah, honestly, the 100 to 125 looks fairly solid, except for a really bad performance from Rogers at that distance. So if we sort, not terrible. Ryan Moore miscut somewhat high, but you have a top 10, a runner-up, a top 10, third. Our winner wasn't as high in terms of total procs. We look at each individual range, like a Corey Connors third in the 75 to 100. Something to note, but not a whole lot around him. Fairly solid here. I mean, you have to scroll a little bit for your first miscut in the 100 to 125. 150 to 175, not necessarily as much. And then 2022, proximity. Yeah, look at the 125 to 150 this year. Look at that. That was fairly strong at the top. Pretty solid except for Brian Stewart in terms of total procs. 100 to 125, not much at all. 125 to 150. You got decent performances, but miscuts as well. I really don't see much here. I don't. And they seem like they're pretty evenly split, too. So, be interested to hear the community's take. Put it in chat or in the comments how you feel about proximity. But instead, I'm just going to jump to the par 3s, as nothing in the proximity is standing out. So, looking at par 3s, see Corey Connors just did not play them well at all. Was not mandatory. Now, you had a couple of pretty high miscuts here in Callum Tarrant and Marty Doe, but look around them. Top 15, a top 10, a top 10, a couple of middlings, second, third, fifth. Pretty solid, other than these two miscuts. If there was a range, surprisingly, it's the 175 to 200. I say surprisingly because remember, the par 3s are evenly split. 150. There's one in each of these range buckets. But having said that, 171 you can easily see moving into the 175 to 200. 183 is pretty well stuck there. 241 is never coming down there. And then the 207 you can see cut playing shorter. So yeah, kind of makes a little bit of sense for the 175 to 200. Good evening, Tony. Good to see you. Thanks for jumping into chat. Is there a course that you would compare this to? Ooh, that's tough. A little bit like Memorial Park, honestly. Maybe not as difficult, but long. Wind being a big defense. Around the green, going to be more important than people might think. Now, the driving aspect of Memorial Park doesn't fit with the Oaks course. And I know it just happened last week, but I mean, they're in the same part of the country. I kind of like the idea of thinking about this a little bit like Memorial Park. Let's see. Other courses this could be like. Really, you're just kind of trying to think of long courses that really, really emphasize iron play. Because not all of these par 5s are attackable in 2. So players are going to have to be good, with shorter wedges and longer irons. I mean, just everything about the approach is where I'm focused this week. But at least off the top of my head, without really, really going into the deep detail, which we will here in a little bit, maybe that'll give me a better idea. But I do kind of like this with Memorial Park. Both long, both emphasize iron play. Around the green will have a factor. The greens are the same surface, so that kind of jumps out to me. So yeah, if there is a range, it does appear to be the 175 to 200 in terms of these par 3s at the Oaks course. But again, both years, we see the winner is negative in the par threes. What about Mexico? Okay, yeah. Not. I didn't think about it just because of the difference in surface, Paspalum versus Poa Trivialis. But certainly forgiving. The only thing I will caution with that, even though the rough isn't difficult here at the Oaks course, there is more trouble off the tee in the sense that these bunkers are supposed to be penal. The fairways aren't necessarily gargantuan wide like at Mexico, but I don't hate it. But I think Memorial Park kind of fits a little bit more than Mexico, if I had to think about it. But yeah, par threes, they're just not a whole lot. Not a whole lot here with the par threes. So we'll take a look at total par threes. This might change come Wednesday night if I think the 175 to 200 is indeed the right range to look at. But I'm telling you, the par threes just aren't carrying much weight. So our top par three performers in the field this week: Billy Horschel, Grayson Sigg, Ben Martin, Chandler Phillips, Denny McCarthy, Ryan Fox, Rory, David Skins, Matty Schmid, and Austin Eckroat are your top 10 in terms of par 3 performance. What is going to carry some weight are par 4s. They are pretty darn important here at the Oaks course. Even though you have your full allotment of par 4s and par 5s, 4 par 3s and 4 par 5s, excuse me. Look at that, 11.8, just massive amount of performance here from Corey Connors. We sort on it: first, 10th, 15th, second, third, 9th, top 25, third. Huge amounts of performance in terms of par 4. Now, the majority of the par 4s play to here, but you see a big lack of correlation. It's actually in the 450 to 5. Now, yes, Smotherman didn't play well overall in the tournament, but played that length of par 4 as well. But look around him: first, second, 6th, 9th, top 30, middling. So 450 to 5, at least last year, was the range for the Oaks course. Par 4s, again, just lots of correlation here. Merritt and Bradley actually didn't play them particularly well, but you sort 4th, 2nd, 1st, 13th, middling from Putnam, runner-up, top 15, top 30. Par 4s are going to be a big ding, and look at the numbers, 6.7. Whereas the tops of these others, not even a 5, 3.6, 1.2. So if there is a range, it looks like it's the 450 to 5. Your winner was, still fairly solid at that range of par 4s. So your top par 4 performers in the field this week: Seabez, Ben On, Joseph Bramlett, Ryo Hitsatsune, Taylor Montgomery, Ludwig Aubert, Brian Harmon, Eric Barnes, Andrew Putnam, and Eric Cole. Your top par 4 performers from 450 to 500: Hideki, Carl Yuan, Eric Barnes, Ben On, Ludwig Aubert, Aaron Rai, Grazerman, Rory, Smalley, Batia, and Austin Cook. And then lastly, take a quick look at par 5s, because I have plenty in Microsoft Excel that I want to show you. Par 5s, got to score them. You got to play them well, just like Memorial Park seemingly has been the case the past few tournaments. You just got to play these well. You see a 6 from Connors. Looks like he led or maybe tied for the lead. Played both ranges really well. 4.3, 4.7. So they look like they have about equal value, at least at a quick glance. Par 5s. Again, look at the massive amount of success the top of the leaderboard had on the par 5s. Your winner maybe didn't lead in it, but was pretty darn close. 4th, 8th, 30th, 1st, 4th, 8th, 4th and 8th, 13th, a little bit further down. Looks like the 550 to 6 carried a little bit more weight 2 years ago. Okay, but at least for now, your top par 5 performers in the field this week: Doug Gim, Mark Hubbard, Bo Hostler, Matt Fitzpatrick, Jimmy Stanger, Eric Van Rooyen, Kevin Yu, Max Grazerman, Keith Mitchell, and Alex Noren. All right, let's go ahead and jump to Microsoft Excel. We've looked at some prior leaderboards and whatnot. Let's see what the data is telling us about the Oaks course. Now, you can argue to remove 2019. It is technically 5 years ago when the Valero 2024 Valero is played. I will be removing this row as it is more than 5 years gone, but we can take a look at it or include it in our look tonight. Off the tee and around the green, fairly close, fairly similar. And you see the around the green has been pretty darn consistent the past 3 years. We're going to be removing this year anyway at the end of the tournament this week. You remove that, looks like it's pretty decent factor. But then again, you also have ball striking here has been, or a couple of low outliers here in terms of ball striking. So, take what you will from this. Off the tee and around the green have been fairly similar. But look at the off the tee, it's kind of diminishing in its importance the past 4 or 5 years. The approach has been pretty consistent with the exception of this one outlier. Putting has been just generally consistent, so definitely going to have our most important shot type B approach come Wednesday night in the mixed condition model. We're not going to overlook putting by any means, but around the green is going to carry some weight. It definitely will. Still debating with myself on off the tee. Maybe 5%, but I'm more thinking it's going to be about the irons. All right, moving into driving greens and whatnot. The greens have actually lowered year over year, which is surprising to me. So have the good drives. You see, distance is not a factor at all. Like a course like the RBC Heritage in Harbor Town actually has a higher distance factor than the Valero. It's weird to see, but distance just doesn't matter here. It really, really doesn't. So I'm not factoring in distance at all. Fairways, you see, has not been a thing either. I'm still thinking it's greens, but I could be talked into good drives, but I'm still thinking it's greens, as this number is slightly less than the field or the full course field or tour average. How am I trying to say this? The full field course average on the PGA Tour. That number is slightly lower, but not by a whole lot. So I'm thinking greens. As we saw in the prior leaderboards, 2 years where the birdies gained were big, 2 years where they were a little bit less. But really, every single year they've outweighed the bogey avoidance by a decent margin. So I think it's correct to probably look at birdies gained if we're going to do that, or birdies are better gained, because there's not a lot of eagles. A few, but not many. But I think, if anything, it'd be the birdies are better gained. But because there's no clear runaway leader, it might be opportunities. And Corey Connors was one of your top performers in opportunities gained on long courses, and he's been exceptional here at the Oaks course. You always like to see correlation there between a player or two who has dominated a course and a statistic. So maybe birdies gained, maybe opportunities gained. Moving into the par 3s, 4s, and 5s. Again, it looks like it would be all or total par 3s, since on the scorecard one falls to each bucket. But look, I mean, this 175 to 200 drastically outweighs all of the other ranges. So it might be correct to just look at the 175 to 200. Now, you do have a small outlier here in 2021, but even so, we're still looking at about 50% of the strokes gained in the par threes coming in 175 to 200. Whatever we decide to do with the par threes, they're going to be very little. We just saw in the prior leaderboards, I mean, the winners were negative at the par threes. So, I'm not going to do a whole lot, but maybe trying to define our margins or find those players on the edges of our consideration. Might look at 175 to 200, considering, about 60% total strokes gained in the par threes come to this range. Moving to par fours, pretty balanced. Pretty balanced, and in fact, even though there are 5 from this range and 4 from this range, they're actually getting significant. They're actually getting outweighed by the group, or by the group that has 4. So, but it looks like just total par fours, to be honest with you. Just kind of looks like total par fours. Because they've been pretty even the past couple of years. They were even in 2019. It was just a massive change in 2021. And then par fives. Like the par fives have gained in importance. These are pretty similar. So I don't know if there's enough here to focus on the 550 to 600. I just don't know if there's enough. They've consistently outweighed the 600 to 650 if that's what you wanted to go on. I don't suppose that's wrong to do that, but we probably are just looking at total par fives, would be my guess. Out of curiosity, I am wanting to see what these proximity ranges are. So proximity total, a little bit more important than the average full field course. Yeah, so 100 to 125, 125 to 150, pretty solid. But I don't think there's enough here to look at proximity this week. So that's why I'm toying with the idea of maybe opportunities being in the mixed condition model. But there's a look at the raw data for the Oaks course. I'll go through this a little bit. I don't want to spend too much time on it, Tony, but that is a very, very legitimate question. Charles Schwab, the Colonial, might also be another decent comparison course comes to mind. Let's see. Because Colonial, even though it's not long, it'll play a lot like the Oaks course. This is more off the tee based. Yeah, I'm thinking maybe Colonial. I don't want to look at TBC Craig Ranch because that's a birdie fest. I mean, the birdies over here for TBC Craig Ranch is a 4. I mean, it's just humongous. It's just a birdie fest, and the Valero is not. You mentioned Mexico. Mexico is much more in the driving than the Valero. Let's see if I can get both of those on the screen for you. So fairly close in terms of driving, but at Vedanta, driving is such a much bigger factor than around the green, whereas Valero, they're kind of even. But I don't hate it otherwise. Of course, distance is a bigger factor at Mexico. Yeah. And then, like I mentioned, Houston, Memorial Park, where we just were. Now, Memorial Park puts a little bit more emphasis on around the green, but pretty even here. It's a lot more difficult than I would like as a direct comparison, but the par threes were okay in terms of importance, and actually played a lot more important this year. Top 3 last year, Charles Schwab. I think Harry Hall's played well here at Memorial, or at the Oaks course at the Valero. Well, we can check that. But I like Colonial and Memorial Park a little bit in terms of courses that'll play like the Oaks course, I think. The big things with the Oaks course is you want courses that are somewhat forgiving off the tee, but you can't be so wayward that it doesn't matter. Whereas like Mexico, those fairways are so extremely wide. They're something like 50 something yards wide that it feels like they're a little bit too generous as a direct comparison. You want forgiving fairway or forgiving driving course, but a heavy emphasis on irons throughout the bag, whether that's wedges and wedges all the way to long irons. Par 5 performance is a big deal as well. Courses of that nature. All right, but there's a look at Valero. In fact, before we move on, let's remove this year and see how that changes our viewpoint, and see how that changes a little bit. So, looking at the par 5s, like for example, par 5s have not played under 550 in 3 years. Hoagie would have been perfect for this course. Yeah, a little bit. But having said that, he's generally not the greatest around the green, which is surprising because Connors has dominated this place and he's terrible around the green. He's just done it all in his irons. So, but I do like that thought process there, Tony, in terms of Hoagie fitting this course. Still the 450 to 5s there. Still the 175 to 200. Birdies gained. So the putting takes over the approach a little bit. Just remember, these were outliers. The around the green's been consistent. Okay, so if you remove 2019, the Oaks course is looking a little bit more like Houston and Memorial Park, with a little bit more emphasis on the around the green than off the tee. Putting slightly outweighing the approach, at least in terms of a strokes gained perspective. So, okay, with that, I've got plenty to still share with you all. So let's take a look at last year's mixed condition model, see how it fared, how predictive it was, what I looked at, and see what we can improve on. So no real shock. Number one player was Corey Connors. Andy wins. I'll give myself a slight bit of credit there, but it's not like it was a bold call or anything. Ben Martin, Siwoo Kim, these guys were all very popular, playing well. Had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 missed cuts in the top 20. A little bit too high for my liking. Definitely want to cut that down. Matt Kuchar, Ricky Fowler played very well, but very high in the rankings. Luke List was a unique play that was okay, I suppose. Everybody was off of Hideki with all the injury stuff. He ends up playing very well. Sam Stevens, runner-up at sub 8%. That's probably the best suggestion or best play that I had last year, being in my top 20 and finishing solo second. So this was okay. A little bit too high on the missed cuts, but it's okay, especially since the winner ended up being the number one player in my rankings. What did I look at? At 20% in approach, I see no reason to change that. This is an iron player's feast. You really have to be dialed with your irons to compete here. 15% par 4s. Again, makes a lot of sense. I might separate out the 450 to 500. Maybe not. But we saw just how strong correlation they were in the prior leaderboards, and when we went through the deep data into the Oaks course. I did look at greens on long courses. Again, makes a whole lot of sense. Probably something that I would bring back, or just kind of bring straight into this year's mixed condition model. Now, I did have 10% off the tee. Be interested to see how predictive it was in terms of performance. This is when, thanks to Gabe, this is when I started to narrow down and perfect the green surfaces. So I did look at Poa Trivialis in terms of putting. I had 10% birdies gained on long courses. Whether that's birdies gained or birdies are better gained, we'll be doing much the same. Or maybe it's opportunities, but you know that we were along the same thought, or I was on the same thought process as last year. 10% in the par 5s, 550 to 6. So I only looked at this range. I think it's probably better just to look at total par 5s. 5% in good drives gained on long courses, just off your screen. 5% in good drives gained. Okay. I was a little bit undecided, I guess, between the greens and the good drives and did both. 5% total procs. If I did anything with proximity, it would be this, sure. And then, in fact, I did separate out and only look at the 175 to 200 par 3s. So how predictive were these? Not the best. The approach was pretty mediocre. Now, the par 4s were pretty darn good. 46. We're looking for anything about 50 or less. Greens was not good at all. Off the tee, putting was not great at all. The par 3s were okay from this specific range. So it's something to think about. But otherwise, not terribly predictive at a course that is predictive year over year. I think I've seen in certain angles or corners of the golf Twitter sphere that this is one of the top 10. I think I saw was 7th most predictive courses on the PGA Tour in terms of year over year success. So something to think about. That I'm gonna be weighting course value pretty heavily. So don't be surprised if Connors is again number 1 in my rankings this year. But a lot to improve. I think we can certainly improve on our results from last year. So there's a look at what I built from last year, or last year's Mexican condition model, and how it performed. So now let's go to the early look file and see, now that we have a good feel for the metrics that are going to play well at the Oaks course, let's see who has performed the best at those metrics at the Oaks course. Oh, before I do that, we can double check a couple of players here. Gosh dang it, I didn't want that. I wanted this. Let's take a look at I believe you said Shank and Harry Hall. I feel like they've played okay here. Yeah, so Harry Hall, only one time, finished in the top 30. Not terrible. But Adam Shank has not been good here. So I was misremembering on that. He's only 1 for 4 with an average finish of 68. So it doesn't appear like he's missing the cut by much, but he is missing the cut here. So take that for what you will. All right. So now let's sort on these various statistics. And again, this is performance at the Oaks course going back to 2019. So 2019, 2021, 2022, and 2023. Of course, the 2020 tournament was canceled for 2020 reasons. All right, so Sam Stevens only one time, but you see here that his irons were immaculate last year, led to his solo runner-up. There's Connors. Jordan Spieth, a winner in 2021 here. Kuchar has been fantastic here. You see his iron play. Hideki, 2 for 2. Charlie Hoffman, 3 for 4. He's been just solid all the way around here. Lonto Griffin, 3 for 3. Lucas Glover, 4 for 4. Ricky, 3 for 4. So there's your best iron players at the Valero the past 4 editions. Definitely want to look at putting. Your top putters, Montgomery, it's only one time. Sam Stevens, it's only one time. You don't expect them to do this. Although Taylor Montgomery is a great putter, but you don't expect him to gain 7.5. You don't expect Sam Stevens to gain 6. Now, Troy Merritt looks like video game numbers, but he's actually played it quite a few times. So there's something about these greens that he really likes, because he's been pretty bad everywhere else on the course, but he really likes putting on these greens. So take a note of that. Vincent Whaley, 2 for 2. There's Harry Hall, putt well last year. Rise, 2 for 2. There's Kuchar. Aaron Baddeley, 2 for 2. Brendan Todd, 2 for 2. Of course, these guys are premier putters anyway. Novak, McCarthy, Bo Hostler, Texas native. Would make a lot of sense. All right. Going to go straight into... I don't feel anything confident in the driving, scoring. Let's just go straight to the par 4s. We saw just how important those were. Par 4s. Keith Mitchell only one time, but look, Corey Connors. Second, technically, in terms of par 4 performance over the past 4 years here. But really, I would say first, because Keith Mitchell's only played it one time. An 8. That's an average, by the way. An 8. He averages gaining 8 strokes on the par 4s per year here. It's amazing. He's just dominated these par 4s. And you see, he's done it fairly evenly split, actually. Yeah, a little bit more preference into the 450 to 5, but it's not like he's slouched off on the 400 to 450 either. Kevin Streelman, 3 for 3. Matt Kuchar, 4 for 4. Jordan Spieth, 3 for 3. Snedeker. Scott Stallings, who's out. I thought I removed him last night. Stupid. Move. Save. Hoffman. Ricky. Patrick Harrington's 3 for 3, if you want to think about a name. Aaron Rye. Ryan Moore, 2 for 3. A little bit less in terms of success, but he's played the par 4s well here. Ben On. Bo Hostler. All right. And then let's take a look at par 5s. And then I'll show you a little bit more in-depth on the research that I posted to social media. So par 5, your top par 5 performers at the Oaks course. I went blank. Jordan Spieth, Charlie Hoffman, Sam Stevens played it well only 1 year. There's Matt Kuchar again, Hideki, Snedeker, Vincent Whaley. There's Lucas Glover. Corey Connors hasn't been as good on these par 5s, but I mean still solid. Just he's dominating the par 4s. Ben Martin, 3 for 3 here. Probably worth a look. Lonto Griffin, the same, 3 for 3. Probably worth a look. So there's your top par 5 performers over the past 4 editions of the Valero Texas Open. All right, I'll bring this back to the base or whatever, sorted on average finish. I'm going to end the show off with showing you a little bit on the research that I posted to social media. First off, let's take a look at some recent form of these past champions. Now, I only went back to 2014, as if you go past a decade, you're starting to get into some obsolete data. At least that is my take as a statistician. It starts to become obsolete. You really want to focus on the more recent data. So one thing I want to show you, let's look at some of the form that our champions have been in coming to the Oaks course. Now, yes, Corey Connors missed the cut at the Players, but you know, he had a top 15 at the Sony, another top 20 at the Century, damn near top 20 at the API. So he had been in some decent form. JJ Spawn, much the same. He had a top 15, a top 25, you know, almost a top 25 at the Valspar. So he had been in decent form, and look how good the irons had been for these players. You know, JJ Spawn gained 6 at the Valspar, the tournament. I can't say the week, but the tournament before the Valero. Look at Jordan Spieth. His irons were blazing hot. Middling at the Players, but remember, this was that horrific wind Players from a couple years ago. Top 5, top 15, top 5, third, essentially fourth. Corey Connors in 2019 had a podium finish. He had a third. Andrew Landry had a runner-up at the Amex. Every single one of these winners, going back to 2014 and Stephen Bowditch, had at least one top 20. Majority of these guys had multiple top 20s. Now, the exception here is actually Stephen Bowditch. He had a 19th, and then his next best was a 37th. But you see, Jimmy Walker was in great form. Charlie Hoffman, nothing elite as in top 10s, but he had an 11th and a 14th and a 17th. Most of these guys had multiple top 20s. Kevin Chappell's actually another outlier or somebody that didn't fit that. But, he still finished 7th at the Masters and then comes and wins the Valero his next outing. Most of these guys had multiple top 20s, so they've been in good recent form. And that their irons were pretty solid. Of course, Connors missed the cut at the Corrales. We don't get strokes gained data there, but you see what he did at the Players. He gained 4.5. He gained 7 earlier in the year. Yes, it is a couple of months prior or even 3 months prior, but he still, early on in the season, had shown blazing hot irons. Andrew Landry gained 6 in his previous tournament. So that's why I've been adamant all night. Did it last night, doing it tonight, and it'll be the biggest portion of the mixed condition model. The irons are going to be so important, and to show the ability that you can at least get hot with them on a week. Not only that, let's take you to the winner matrix, and this is performance at the Valero before a player wins. So you can see Corey Connors wins in 2019 and in 2023. So look at the performance the year before a player wins. I know Bowditch is the magic number and didn't play all that well, but he still made the cut. Jimmy Walker, top 20 the year before he wins. Charlie Hoffman, 11th the year before he wins. Chappell, a top 5 before he wins. Landry, middling. Spieth, top 30. Connors, a top 30. And then 35th. So 8 of the past 9 winners of the Valero Texas Open at least made the cut in the prior year's Valero Texas Open. To varying degrees of success. I'll give you that. Bowditch was pretty darn bad. Landry wasn't good. Spieth, Connors, they were middling. But Chappell and Hoffman and Walker had played the previous Valero Texas Open very, very well. The one outlier here is J.J. Spawn. He missed the cut the year prior to winning, but he also had an amount of success a little bit further back in time. So, success at the Oaks course is also going to be something that we're going to want to take a pretty good look at. So those are the 2 big things that I have for you all in terms of research. And of course, I put the players that fit criteria out on social media. So I ask that you go check that out. If you want a list of names that potentially could fit as in terms of winners for this week, I certainly fired off several names at numbers that I liked early this morning when the odds came out. And you'll be surprised. There are some long shots on there. This isn't Rory and Max Homa and all that. There are some long shots on that list. So I think you'll be surprised at the names that fit the criteria that I found. But that's going to do it for the show this evening. Thanks, Tony, for jumping into chat. I always appreciate it. Love what I do. Taking a look at in-depth sports statistics, giving you a statistician's view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Thanks to you and thanks to everybody else that tunes in, watches, listens, and supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. It helps me out a bunch by you all doing that. I truly appreciate the support. I really do. For all of the wagers that you've made so far this week for the Valero Texas Open, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the Valero Texas Open, until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.